Most of you know about low elo chess games, and they are an absolute riot, but I just cannot say the same thing about Tetris. There are a few instances, like this one, where games are just painfully agonizing and complete genius at the same time. So let's just look at it on the surface. We have the very famous guest and user. Guest, I don't have a rank for them, obviously, but I'd say they're about S rank, and user over here is about A rank. The reason they have a name like this long is because they got their username removed. How unfortunate. But let's get into it. I will explain completely why this is such a fantastic game. All right. So as you can already see, they are both open remains. We're seeing PCO versus DT Cannon, and in this matchup, if you can get this PC off, the PCO player wins. Because, as you'll see in a second, you get pushed all the way up to the board, and yeah, once you send that T-spin double, they get that sent to their board, and then they can just send it back. So that could very much be the end of you. And as you can see in this, it somehow comes true. So you get sent the usual, and now that you're at the top of your board, you don't have any plan to downstack. You are dead. Yeah, it's hard to really judge the skill of players when they're put in such a volatile situation, but yeah, somehow this is only the first round, and it's about to get way crazier than that. But just before we leave, if we look at user on the right side, they have a small downstack going on, but they decide not to continue it and open up the board. So here, instead of placing the J piece to the side, what you can do is place the S piece in the hole and then the J piece to the left, and then we have an open well. So that is kind of unfortunate, but really can't be helped. Right? So as we move on to round 2, just guess what both players are going to do next. Yeah, as you can see, users probably just knows DT Cannon or TKI. We'll get that later, but yeah, user is basically finding every single possible opportunity to go for DT Cannon. And I would say it is kind of a crutch opener, but I'm fine with it. And we're going to see as a DPC from guest. And as I pause here, you can also see on the right, there is a misdrop of an overhang. I'm assuming that user just somehow thought the L piece was already there, and it is clearly not. So the best way to get out of situations like these is immediately just clear up any rows that are blocking your sight of the well. So what I would do here is probably put the L piece on the left, and then fill out the right side and get that thing open. And then guest here is completely fine, just going for 2 T-spins and then going for PC. That basically was the round. So as you can see, there is a very easy solution for the PC. And yeah, guest just waits around, not really doing anything, and then does not find the solution. Unfortunate, but still in a really good position because user also does not know what to do here. So they try to stall out with the eyepiece, and yeah, that's not going to do anything. That's just going to make you lose. What you can do here, though, is either if you didn't have the Z piece held, you could tuck it in with the eyepiece. If you still have that, you could just slide it in the middle, and that would actually be a pretty good downstack. But instead, we get one of the worst possible options, and there's almost no chance of recovery. And yeah, like I said, you still could recover, but user just decided, nah, it's not worth it. I'm just going to top out. So as we move on to the next round, let's just think about those last 2 and see how it could get any worse. All right, we see a DT Cannon once again, but both players are doing it this time. And if you'll notice, guest uses 2 T pieces to make that DT Cannon, which may or may not have consequences in the future. All right. Yeah, so both players might just be having trouble with this. And miraculously, guest has the perfect bag to do a DT Cannon, but as you can see, we're at the end of this, and they place the J piece right here, which actually kills you, and you're done. You cannot play anymore. You lose that round. So what guest needs to do here is wait and see where the garbage is coming, or not even wait, just pay attention to the garbage holes, or garbage queue right here. As you can see on the left, this is your garbage queue. If you're being sent at 8 lines, you might as well just try to cancel it because you cannot tank that much. And if you're not paying attention to your garbage hole, then you're just playing the game by yourself, and you should not you shouldn't do that, because if you get sent something like a DT cannon, you are screwed. Alright? So, unfortunate loss. Could have been prevented. Let's move on. So as you can see, we're almost halfway through the game. Alright. And I don't know how this happened, but, you know, both players do the exact same TKI for both bags. Yeah, look at that. Somehow both players do the exact same bag, and I would... What are the chances in that even happening? That's crazy. But anyways, both players eventually go off to do their own thing. If I had to choose, I would prefer guest board, just because it's much cleaner and you have more opportunities to build T-spins around the top of your well. Yeah. And like 3 seconds later, this is probably one of the best boards I've ever seen. I would kill to have this kind of board in a Tetra League match. User is just barely hanging out there. There are a few ways to get some attack in on user side, as you can see the example I'm showing on screen right now. But what user does instead is just keep stacking up with no plan of down stacking it until, yeah, that huge spike that came earlier. That was probably the best thing that's happened so far. And there might not even be a way to survive this. If there is, let me know, but yeah, I've looked at this for a while. I just do not see anything. Right? Move on to round 5. And yeah, let's just talk about this. These players just somehow managed to do the exact same TKI variation. It's crazy. Well, the chances are higher than I think it is. It's still mind-boggling. And then guest over here is like, oh my gosh, I'm so good at this game. I can do a fractal. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, you can, but you use your T piece, and after that, if you set this fractal up the way it was intended, it's still kind of hard to work off of it, or at least to put your other pieces around on your board, because you gotta kind of stack it up like a 4 wide, and we will also get into that later. I just foreshadowed it. User, I don't like their board either. But as you'll see, once guest gets off that fractal, we are seeing a 4 wide right here. So guest is an absolute genius and actually set up that fractal to piss me off and just immediately go into a 4 wide and win the game. And I don't actually know if it would win the game, but at this rank, I definitely think it would. So all guest needs to do right here is just keep stacking all the way to the top and then do a 4 wide. Hopefully the combo sticks. And so user, honestly, I think user could still live in most situations, but if they are not prepared for the 4 wide, they are completely done for. All right, yeah, this is still extremely slow. And I don't know how, but in the nick of time, user manages to get a decent down stack, which actually does lead to a counter spike. So if we see this real quick, so we get a Tetris and then a skim. And if we unleash this Tetris right here at the very end of our combo, this is going to send a lot of garbage. And yeah, user doesn't do that. User instead just places another piece and then goes for the Tetris. Like, why? All right, if your intention wasn't to send garbage, why did you do it right after? All right, so what you need to do here instead is continue the combo if you have a huge attack like this. If you don't, then yeah, go ahead, don't do it. But yeah, this is gonna send way more than just waiting right after. It's very sad to see, but you know, it's A rank. I shouldn't expect too much. I'm sorry, don't feel offended, A ranks fans. I still love you. And here we see user's absolute brilliance come into play right here. So as you can see, you might think, oh my god, that's such a terrible misdrop. Why would user do that? This is actually an amazing setup to make a T-spin into a Tetris. All right. So as you can see, we have an eyepiece. I don't know how they predicted the eyepiece would come up, but as you can see by the sequence, it's very possible to get a TSD into Tetris setup, and that could actually Could that kill? I think it could kill, but it's hard to say because Guest might not be preoccupied with stacking up. But yeah, this is just an absolutely brilliant setup by User, making that base of the T-spin and then somehow finding the perfect amount of pieces to round it all out, and just does not go for the T-spin, instead just starts stacking normally. Yeah, I was as disappointed as you were. Yeah. So problem with just putting the eyepiece down here is that it has better places to be, especially right here. So if you don't have an L piece, clearly User does not have an L piece. This is considered a dependency, and you need to fix this right away, or else you're gonna be in some serious. You're gonna be in a serious grave. I don't know. I don't know the idiom. I guess I'm way out of it. All right. But yeah, you're gonna have to wait until one of these comes, and if you use the eyepiece and skim this, then you have a giant well that you haven't used yet. So yeah, the situation is much worse for you, and yeah, this stacking just unfortunately leads to a top out. And the sad thing is there's so many ways to get out of this, or so many ways to just be able to downstack. You can put the S piece on the side and then go for the downstack. But unfortunately, User just decided to stack up at the very top of the board. Just don't do this. This is very risky, and only do it if you know what you're doing. But yeah, Guess did pretty well in this one. Even went for the fancy T-spin single. I don't actually think it would have mattered in this case, but you know, it's cool. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on a rant right now. Oh, here's the most wonderful part of this round. Just guess what's about to happen next. Guess misdrops twice, and User has not placed a single piece down. So if User wanted, they could probably just go for a PCO and then win the entire game. But, you know, game goes on, User still does not know what to do, and instead tries to set up for a DT cannon that does not have the correct bag. So this is about to be one of the ugliest DT cannons ever. Just completely ugly. And as you can see on the left side, Guess is misdropped again. Twice. This, kids, is why you need to slow down when you have time in the opening. Especially because these players aren't moving that fast. Like, if you're playing against small fish or something, then yeah, go ahead, go as fast as you can. Okay, actually what I meant to say was survive the opening. I just thought it was relevant at the time. But, yeah, you do not need to be rushing here. Right? And if you actually, like, if you change your mind about going for DT cannon, you're like, this might not be possible, I want to try and fix this, there actually is a way you can fix this. You can use the S piece and kind of use that as a prop to make a T-spin. That's just really clean. I think that would be the best way to recover from that. But, you know, both players are kind of incapacitated, and it's just going to be a matter of whoever recovers first wins. And very good idea on Guest side to make a T-spin in the air, because there's really nothing you can do with this now. Might as well just attack from here. So, great idea. User just has a super messy board, and once they recover from the DT cannon, it's going to be a rough ride to actually get down. Yeah, especially at A rank when you don't really have the capacity to downstack everything. Everything is just a complete train wreck, right? And somehow, after this misdrop right here with the T-piece, Guest is completely fine because they're able to make kind of a, I guess, like a small combo off of this, and then everything just turns out fine. It's a miracle these players are even alive. Not in real life, I mean in Tetris. Don't worry, I love you guys. You're amazing. Yeah, so I was talking about this box right here. I was like labeling it as one of the worst things that happened in the round. So I lied about that. This is actually one of the most genius plays of this entire round because, as you'll see soon, you can actually make an SDSD. And they have the perfect bag to do this. You have a T piece, you have an L piece. You can make an SDSD and then go for probably 2 Tetrises. Not 2 Tetrises, just one. But yeah, basically, Guest planned all of this, and they're the most genius T-spinner alive. They're planning to throw off the opponent by making a box in the bottom and just never using it up until now to make an SDSD. So that is what I call some really smart planning, except, yeah, Guest doesn't do that. Instead goes for a Tetris. Not a bad idea. I just would have preferred if they did an STSD. That would be some great content right there. I could at least say that Guest planned all of this, and they knew exactly what was going to happen. But now I can't. I couldn't say that for any of them, but, you know, it's fine. They are A ranks or S ranks. I really don't know. So now we just get back into some, you know, normal gameplay. As you can see, user had to go through a lot of down stacking for this to even get here. So yeah, somehow after all that travesty, they are completely fine. So if you'll notice, Guest has a pretty cool donation that they can do to make this position much easier to use. And if you get this donation, you can actually go straight into LST stacking. That I don't actually know how risky that would be, but if it worked out, you could probably win the round with that. But yeah, this donation would work really well. Also, you don't have to use your T piece or Z piece or S piece until later. But instead, yeah, this is exactly what you'd expect from an A-rank game. And instead tries to go for a fractal. Don't do this. Just try not to go for a fractal if you don't have the resources for it. Especially if you're that high on the board. That will spell your demise. But yeah, basically, we're seeing a lot of misdrops and a lot of risky setups. Those are like the main two things I'm seeing from both these players. It's just kind of crazy how both of them are like completely in sync, but also not at the same time. And you'll notice that both of them do the exact same TKI setup again, but this isn't even a good TKI setup, I'll be honest. So the problem with this TKI setup is that usually TKI can be made in one bag or 7 pieces, but this one you have to fill in this area, and that requires extra pieces. All right, so I would consider it bad also on the premise that it's not very flexible by itself because you have to work around it. But somehow, yet, both players are making the exact same setup for the T-spin, right? Yeah, of course there was a misdrop and they both placed their T pieces on the right. But yeah, these players are just, they want a fair fight, all right? Don't blame them, right? As you can see, user there was really thinking about it, going for a King Crimson. Don't know if they wanted to actually do that, even though there's no J piece nearby. But yeah, if they were going to go for King Crimson, that would be pretty poggers. I'm never going to say that again. But I really love this stack from user. Just huge, has the potential to combo, and yeah, TSD onto Tetris. That's what all good stacks should have, right? And we get exactly that, actually. Guest right now has a pretty solid 3-wide coming up. It may not cancel, but they'll be completely fine if they know how to cancel. And guess what? Yeah, they make the exact same mistake that they did before about just letting the garbage come to them and not paying attention to what the other person is doing. So here, Guest just places the S piece down and then immediately loses because they're right below the board. And yeah, it's really saddening because you have to check your board first, or at least check the garbage queue, because that thing lights up. You get steam coming out of your board, well, at least on ultra graphics. But point is, if you're playing on anything past minimal, you need to pay attention to that garbage queue, because that's going to be your biggest indication of when garbage is coming to you. And if you're not prepared for that, you're dead. Okay, let's move on. Don't worry, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Right? We see one last attempt. By the way, this is the last round. Yeah, so get ready for this. We see a misdrop, PCO, and then a DT cannon. And this is a very awkward T-spin to do. It's not my favorite, but it works. And somehow you get the most amazing garbage possible. There's so much you can do with this, but if I had to give some advice about big garbage holes, do not send it immediately. Instead, you want to build around it, or even build higher if you can. But you want to try and build up a really good, clean board at the very top. Because what you have compared to the other person is resources, and you can also build up your back to back. Back to back is huge in this game, so if you can, try and do T spins at the top of your not the top. Don't do it at the top of your board. Just do it in a safe place where you can build up that back to back, and then eventually you'll have enough pressure to top out your opponent. Right? Right? So we have a relatively good board for guest. I really like it, actually. For user, we kind of need to work around that garbage. But yeah, other than that, and the fact that guest misdropped, both players are doing decently fine. I wouldn't say perfectly fine, but just decently. Alright, and as you can see, guest just really wants that T-spin, and goes absolutely ham on every single piece that they've put down. So if you do like T-spins and you want to go for them, you need to assess if they're good first, right? Like here, yeah, you can do a T-spin, but you also need to have a good board for that, right? If you stack like this, yeah, that's just really bad. You don't want to have a board like that at the very end. This is the kind of board you want to have on the right. Something super clean, so you can see the clear difference between what's a good board and what isn't. So yeah, if you ever notice that kind of pattern, then you know exactly what to do next, which is don't keep building T-spins. And I don't know how, but everything just comes together and we get a huge combo at the very end. And instead of, once again, I talk about continuing the combo and they don't do it. I would actually prefer going for a triple here, because that still sends a lot of garbage. Right? Somehow both players are still completely fine. And then we have the Well of Death. At this point, I would probably just say goodbye to user, because there's, unless you're going at like 3 pieces per second, there is maybe no way of surviving this. But yeah, that is the end of user, and yeah, the end of a really fascinating set. If I had to say main takeaways from this, is that you don't need to go. I guess like this is a small thing, but the misdrops in this game were absolutely horrendous. So let me. I'm gonna try and have to find it, but yeah, some of these misdrops were just completely terrible. But it's completely fine if you know how to recover from it. Right? You need to know how to recover from these misdrops, because if not, you'll just be stuck in limbo the entire game. And by the way, a little in this exact same round, I also don't know if this amazing misdrop was planned or not, but right here you can actually make a floating T-spin on top of this T piece right here, and that is a clean donation that sends a TSD. You know what? These players are they surprise me way too much. All right, they're just accidental geniuses that forgot how to execute their plans. All right, I would say they're X rank, right? But yeah, these misdrops are absolutely huge, and you need to play slower when you're in these kinds of situations, or at least think a bit harder, right? Of course, some people might not have the time to think about their misdrops, but sometimes it's just better to slow down, because if you have a combo, that's super useful, and you can use that to take the time to take a deep breath and think about where you can place your pieces, right? And then the second thing is absolutely fundamental downstacking or upstacking. Just some of these decisions that you're making at the top of the board, both of you actually, I just do not like them, all right? And I think the biggest thing might be panicking. And I heard from I heard from one of them that they were lagging, and I understand that. But if you are lagging, then you want to play slow, because I think playing slower is better than misdropping everywhere. And you want to be aware of where to be slow and where to be fast. You can be fast at the very bottom of your board, but if you're at the top and you have to think about a combo or something, or how to not top out, I guess, then now might be the time to think about it, because at these lower levels, you're not going to get 30 spiked into oblivion, right? It's going to be pressure over time. And with that, this is just one of the craziest sets I've ever seen. It's so incredibly funny, but also a great lesson for some people out there. Uh, yeah, thank you for watching.